Mark here again. Just want to put something forth for consideration, right? For those who doubt the Bible, the miracles in the Bible, when Jesus turns water into wine, the splitting of the parting of the Red Sea, the 5 loaves and the 2 fish feeding over 5,000 multitudes of people, 5,000 people. For those who doubt that, right? For instance, let's take a look at the fish. 2 fish, you have a multitude, 5,000, a whole multitude of people, and you take 2 fish and feed over 5,000 or 5,000 people. How is that possible, right? That's the miracle. How do you doubt? The people doubt that, right? That's for the naysayers and for the doubters out there. Well, consider this: you have one stem cell. You take one cell, right? And that one cell familiarizes itself with another cell, and then it replicates. And it continues to, it replicates indefinitely. It replicates, it duplicates that cell. That's what stem cells do. A stem cell, it patterns itself off of another cell and then continues to replicate that cell. So that one cell continues to replicate indefinitely. All right? Then consider mitosis, which is another form of cell duplication and replication. Meiosis is the replication of a gamete, which are sex cells. So it's not that's not what I want to look at. Mitosis, not meiosis. Meiosis is just for the sex cells. Mitosis is for all the somatic cells in your body. Somatic cells are those that are not reproductive. So the interesting thing is, in terms of these somatic cells, when a cell goes through mitosis, one cell becomes 2. And those 2 cells continue, the replication continues until a fully developed organism is constructed. That reproduction continues until there's a fully developed organism, which is you and I. A fully developed adult has over 2 trillion cells. So if you was to reverse engineer that, you would get back to what's called mitosis, which is that one cell replicating into 2 and the 2 and so on and so forth and so forth. So here you have one cell that can replicate and you have what's called spontaneous replication, right? Spontaneity. So all these things are natural biological functions, right? But yet, obviously, we believe that this happens. You have to believe that these things happen, because you and I wouldn't be here, because we're the end product of this mitosis. Also, the splitting of the Red Sea, right? You want to doubt that? Okay, well, 1930s, back in the 1930s, they split the atom, right? The Manhattan Project, which was the construction of the atomic bomb, right? When the scientists such as Niels Bohr, Einstein, and so many others learned about splitting the atom, right? The power that's released from the splitting of the atom. Well, put it like this: we're in the 21st century, and there are people who doubt the parting of the Red Sea. Okay, if we went back 2,000 years ago, 2,000 years we go back, and we tell, somehow we're able to travel back in time, and we tell them, well, men in the 21st century are flying. Those people would doubt us. They would say we're crazy, we're nuts, right? But yet we are, right? We have airplanes and we can fly. If we went back the same time, travel back, and tell them, well, they're able, the modern people are able to stay on one side of the globe and speak to someone else on the other side of the globe, they would probably think we're nuts, because they're not familiarized with the telephone, right? So my thing is, if today science can show us that, for instance, even if you doubt Jesus turning water into wine, right? Okay, one can argue that seems pretty feasible, right? But for the doubters, okay, well, if we doubt that the miracle, he can turn water into wine, well, if you look at the periodic table, they figured out how to turn carbon into nitrogen, hydrogen into helium, and so on and so forth, so many others. And these are separate elements in terms of the periodic table. They're completely different. And when they transmute, it's not a transformation where you just rearrange certain things and it's the same element. No, it's a completely different element, right? In terms of the periodic table. So if we could see these things happening today based off in the scientific community, then it's why is it impossible or why is it unimaginative to wrap our minds around the concept that Jesus could have taken those 5 loaves of bread and multiplied it and replicated it the same way our biological system takes one cell, replicates it into trillions. If we can take the atom and part the atom, split the atom, why is it impossible to think that God with his power could split the sea? So to me, I don't want to wade too much into the details. What I really want to do is just conceptualize, just focus on the concept of it all. Like, well, if it's possible for this, why is it impossible for that, right? If it's possible to completely change one element into another by transmutation or radioactivity, that's what radioactivity does, that, right? When you have what's called beta decay, which is a type of radioactive process, you have a neutron turn into a proton, and hence which is the substructure of an element, and hence that element changes to a completely different element, and it would have to be moved on the periodic table. It would no longer be able to be placed in its position. It would have to be relocated and dislocated on the periodic table. So it's interesting. Like I said, why is it that we cannot? So put like this: science is if I was speaking to someone who in China, if I was somehow ended up in China and I was talking to someone in China, they speak Mandarin. I don't speak Mandarin. So I would not understand what they're saying to me. But if I had if I had someone with me that speaks both Mandarin and can translate to English, then that person would be my liaison, right? My go-between. And that person would translate what the person in Mandarin is saying, and I would comprehend. Well, that's allegorical. The person who's translating is science. The person who's speaking is the miracle. That's how I look at it. Science is the translator of the miracle. So, yeah, I won't understand the miracle if I don't have someone with more depth to explain it. Sometimes, they tell you got to take things by faith, and I get it. Some people don't want to take blind faith, right? And I get that. I understand that. I don't necessarily subscribe to blind faith theory. But what I do subscribe to is that just because I don't understand Mandarin language doesn't mean that whatever the person is saying is invalid, or it doesn't mean that the person doesn't exist who's talking to me, right? Because that's what the miracle is. The miracle, that's fairy tale, it's folklore, it's a myth, it's, goobly gobbly gosh, whatever. It's fanciful thinking, it's nonsensical. Well, just because I don't understand the person who's speaking in Mandarin doesn't mean that they're goobly gobbly gosh, like they're just fanciful fairy tale, they don't exist. No, they do exist. I just don't understand them. But if I have someone to translate, then I can get what they're saying and we can have some kind of dialogue. Well, that's an allegory. And like I said, the person who's translating is representative of the scientific community. The person who's speaking in Mandarin is the miracle. And I'm still myself in this allegory. So what I say is, science to me is the translator of the miracle. Science translates the miracle. It interprets the miracle. It puts a face to the miracle, right? It makes me, when I understand and see how science operates, I can say, okay, I can see the miracle of turning water into wine. I can see the replication and multiplication and division of 2 fish and 5 loaves. I can see that. Right? Because I could study biology and I could see how cells do that. And cells do that in a spontaneous way, right? So I can see that. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got to say. So don't doubt the script. Don't doubt the miracles of Christ. Doubt yourself first, but don't doubt Christ, because you might not just be awakened to certain things. The world is much bigger than you and I, our limited thinking, our capacity, our scope. Our narrow scope of thinking. And it's not a knock on you or I. Some of us are more awakened to things than others. That's all that means. So until next time, y'all keep studying, keep being the best, better version of yourself. All the superlatives out there. All right. Peace.